When people state their reasons as to why they love the story of Lord of the Mysteries, they will most likely tell you it's because of the world building, its in-depth power system, and the many interesting side characters. Point being that Klein Moretti, our main character, usually isn't the main go-to reason for why people love the novel. Which I'm not saying is a bad thing, I'm just stating that this is the truth or fact of the matter. Admittedly, Klein is not a very complex character, at least not at the start of the novel. At the start of the novel, he is just a normal person who has been put in an extraordinary situation, and for this reason, it's very easy to just push Klein off as a bland character with no personality, which I recently saw being done in a debate between two readers, one that was in favor of Lord of the Mysteries and the other being in favor of Reverend Insanity. I assume that these two readers were being paid good money by their respective authors because they were really going at each other for a really long time. But returning to the topic at hand, at the risk of stepping on some toes, I do agree with the Reverend Insanity reader that Klein may not be as complex as Feng Yuan, but I heavily disagree with the sentiment that Klein is a boring, bland, or robotic character. In a story such as Lord of the Mysteries, Klein doesn't need to be as philosophical or as deep as Feng Yuan, since this is not the main focus of the story. The main goal of the story is to unravel and discover the truths of the mysterious world that Klein has found himself in. Whereas in the story of Reverend Insanity, the main focus is primarily on Feng Yuan, his goals, his philosophy, and how he overcomes challenges in order to fulfill his dream of reaching immortality. One story is about the world and its mysteries, while the other is practically a character analysis of someone who has lived for centuries. That being said, I believe that Klein is not as simple or as bland as some people may downplay him to be, because even in the first volume, there's moments in which Klein lets down his guard and shows his true character. I say Klein lets down his guard because for most of the novel, Klein is acting. I have a whole other video about this topic, but in short, in Lord of the Mysteries, you obtain powers from drinking potions at the price of potentially losing control and becoming an abomination. The trick to avoiding these dangers simply being to not exist in the world of Lord of the Mysteries in the first place. But another viable approach is to act out the role of whatever potion you drink. Say if you drank the potion named Bus Driver, you would have to start acting like a bus driver in order to fully grasp the potion and its potential uses. With that being said, Klein is acting as a seer for a majority of the first volume. And so because of this, we don't usually see Klein acting as himself. That is, except for a few scenes where he kind of loses control, not that way, but in a way that reveals his true emotions and feelings. My favorite scene being the one that I will discuss, which is when he writes a letter to Spirit Medium Daily. Leading up to this scene, it has not been long since Klein lost his friend and mentor, Old Neil. And to add on to the amount of stress that Klein is most likely feeling, he loses yet another person, and while he is filled with remorse or regret about the loss of Kenley, he is forced to divert his attention to someone else, his Captain Dunn Smith, who he accidentally oversaw eating something from the dead body of Kenley White. Now, Klein has no idea what the hell is going on. He believes that his captain might be losing control since, from his perspective, he just saw his captain committing an act of cannibalism, which even a normal person most likely wouldn't do. Not wanting to lose another person in his life, Klein asks for help from Spirit Medium Daily, who is much more experienced and most likely more knowledgeable than him on subjects such as this. When Klein starts to write the letter to Spirit Medium daily and puts his thoughts onto paper, he doesn't get far into the letter before all of what has happened in the prior week starts to accumulate in his head. First, he loses old Neil, then he loses Kenley White, and now he's facing the possibility of losing his beloved captain, Dunn Smith, who is currently showing signs of what he believes to be losing control. And all of this just accumulates into his head where he is unable to put all of his thoughts on paper, and he throws his pen as he crumbles up the paper and starts banging on his table in a display of raw emotion that is unlike anything that we have seen of Klein up till this point in the novel. As to why this scene is my favorite and why I'm talking about it in a video about how people downplay Klein, his character, and just overlook him in general, it's because this scene, at least for me, just shows how untrue it is, the belief that Klein is a robotic, unfaltering main character that just brushes off or walks off traumatic experiences like nothing has happened. Because on the surface, it may look like that, but in reality, Klein is holding all of these painful events and emotions inside of him so that he doesn't lose control in more ways than one and end up making rash decisions that might ultimately end up hurting him. Admittedly, it does sound kind of like a cop-out, as what I'm saying is basically the equivalent of just, hey, Cuttlefish can write an interesting character, and the MC is actually very interesting. It's just that he decides not to show his more interesting side because of plot-related reasons. But honestly, that's really just what it boils down to. Lord of the Mysteries simply doesn't need a main character such as Fang Yuan, who's constantly talking about proverbs or teaching life lessons and giving insightful wisdom about the world and how it works, because that's not what Lord of the Mysteries is about. It's about exploring the world and the mysteries and the past history of the people who have inhabited it. Sorry, that's really hard to say. But yeah, for the type of story that Lord of the Mysteries is, Klein perfectly meets all of the necessary requirements that a story such as this would need from a main character. And I'm really just tired of hearing or seeing people say that Lord of the Mysteries is an inferior novel to so-and-so because it has a main character that is weaker or less fleshed out. And even if this may or may not be the case, it just takes away from what is the main strength of Lord of the Mysteries. It's like comparing a novel such as Game of Thrones to that of the Three-Body Problem and saying the Three-Body Problem is a superior and better novel than the Game of Thrones series because it has aliens while the other doesn't. It's just a nonsensical argument that doesn't correctly or accurately weigh what each novel is about or what each novel excels in. With that being said, I'm interested in what you guys think about this topic or issue. And other than that, thank you so much for watching all the way through. And I hope you guys have a good rest of your day.